Well, we're going to get started here. I don't know if anybody else, if they show up, they can. This is going to be my second installment, my second Zoom. My cameraman here this week is my son, Pete. He's new to this gimbal and the thing, but we'll do the best we can. This installment, again, is going to be on preventative maintenance. And I don't know, I don't think any of you were on the last one, so we'll leave it kind of open. I had a couple of ideas of going through the preventative maintenance and showing some, one, I'm going to do a tire change. And if you guys just throw out anything else you want to learn from the list. Did you guys pull up any of did they have the documents online there? The preventative, the FAR aim? Should be a posting of, on the FAR aim, you got the FAR's 43, Appendix A, and then it starts, preventative maintenance starts on letter C, and that is the things that a certificated pilot and generally owner of the airplane, but he doesn't necessarily have to be the owner, but has, you're not renting it from somebody. You have access to the plane. And those are the big list of items that you can do as a mechanic. So, and it's a pretty big list. And so I was looking at this one. Last time I did an oil change. This one I figured I'd start right off the top. Removal, installation, repair of landing gear tires. And then it gets into landing gear, greasing bearings, line 4. How does it sound to you guys? Is that something you want to be interested in looking at?
It sounds great, Paul. It's David, and I think that would be awesome to see. Yep. Is there a link also to your previous Zoom that I could go back and look?
Is we're looking at. I don't know if there is. I don't think we recorded it yet. And the thing is, if you want to, you know what, guys? There was only 2 people, and you guys, if we want to go over and do the oil change again, I'm good with that. We got a little bit of time. It's up to you guys. Let's do an. I'll do an oil change on this and a tire change.
That's great. I'm going to go grab the FAR aim right now too and look at the rest of the stuff.
It's a huge list. It's a huge list. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just get started. Also, something to think about is just lost my train of thought on that, but we'll get going on jacking it up. I don't know what right now. Last time I did it on a Piper. This time I'm going to do it on a Cessna. I don't know what you guys are flying, but I mean, we just have to figure out, the safe way of jacking. Looking, every POH talks about servicing, and so just find your jack points. Sometimes you need a little bit of maybe a tool or an adapter to your jack. What I'll show you on this one, this is a restart Cessna. That means it was when they restarted Cessna back up in '96, so it's one of the newer ones. And there's a jack point right underneath here, right underneath the leg. So I went down to Riley, got a standard floor jack, which is great for it, but how do you get up underneath there? Well, we made this jack point. It fits into the slot where your normal jack is, and then it has a little cup that holds into that. There's like a little fitting on the bottom there. So sometimes just do it safely. Don't damage your airplane. Figure out what you need to do to get your type of airplane jacked up. So that's what we'll do. First, we're going to be changing this. And if you take a look, it's a perfect timing for this because somebody was flying this last night after hours, and I came in this morning, and I'll show you why we're changing it. Okay, we're up, we're clear. Okay, so you take a look here, and we got cords coming through. And your tires, you probably, as aircraft owners, I don't let my tires go down this low personally. But in a flight school, we get as much life out of them as we can because we go through them a lot. And but when it gets to the cords, that's a no-go. So here's the cords, and that's why we're changing this one. And if, as you see, there's some good spots on this tire. In the training facility, we have a lot of flat spots. Now you'd expect the students who are flying these are instrument pilots, and you think, man, they should be able to land without hitting the brakes. But I think they forget there's so much going on with the learning instruments that their mind's pretty much gone by the time they get landing, and they're like, oh, they put their feet on the brakes and they flat spot them. Like we see that when they transition over. So what we're going to do first is we're going to look at it. Your brake's going to be holding your wheel on. So you got most standard brakes, it's going to be a 7/16 inch wrench that holds the Macaulay or Cleveland brake caliper on. So that's the first thing we're going to take off. And that's also a good time that we can be looking at the brake linings too. Try to stay out of the way for the camera on this. So we'll get in here and we're gonna now sometimes they might be safety wired. They're depending on the manufacturer. You see it more often in the Cessnas that have the Macaulay brake caliper. Cleveland doesn't usually. What they suggest is just a washer on one side, and then torque the bolts. Very light torque. It's between 70 inch-pounds and 100 inch-pounds. Standard torque on you look up a standard torque for a 7/16 headed bolt, which is a 1/4 inch bolt, but the head for the ratchet is 7/16 is about 104 inch-pounds top on there. You can find that any standard torques. The FA puts out the AC 43 one. I don't know which model it is right now, but it has all standard torques charts and stuff. You can look that online. Here we're just going to look at these brake linings. Most brake linings, they want you to change them at when they get down below 100,000. Some might actually have a little mark showing you where that is. These look pretty good. They're going to make it another probably 50 hours. You can see the rivets in there. As long as the rivet line has some depth to it, you're looking pretty good. These are probably about 75% good still. And then we'll just take a look in here. Pull that carefully off the back side here. Best thing is if you're going to look at that stuff, don't let the caliper on the Cessnas hang. It's a solid line there, and it's very hard on it. So these look good too. So plenty of meat left on this one. So put that back there. Go back on the pins of the caliper. You can clean up those caliper pins too. If they get a little goopy, you can put a little anti-seize on there, clean them up with a Scotch-Brite. It allows your caliper to float better. If you look in here, you can get a picture on there. There's the 2 pins inside the hub, and those are floating. You're floating, sliding back and forth like this, and then on the other side of the brake disc, this is where the bolts go in. So the whole system's floating back and forth. So you wear evenly on the inboard and outboard pads. So, all right. So now we got the brake inside or outboard brake lining off. Come over to this side. And I'm just gonna. If you want to get fancy, you can go get a good cotter pin extractor. I usually just move the stem out of the way. I usually just try to pull out a couple of the tabs on the cotter pin just to make it a little easier to come out. Like that. Now on the Cessnas, that's pretty much how you're going to be putting the cotter pin in. It's just going to go through Piper. it's going to come through, and you can usually bend the tab up or do this depending if you have wheel counts or not. So you just have to take a look at what you have as far as get that started there. Finish it off with a set of dikes. Okay, set that aside. And pretty simple. Just take your channel locks, crack the backing off. Now this is the part that, depending on, as required, you look at a maintenance manual and you'll see that, and just set everything off kind of in order for you. On the maintenance manual, on a lot of these axles, wheels, they might be shimmed differently. And so you just have to, when you take them off, just make sure you check for everything. So in this case, I'm going to pull the tire off. I'm going to check for any shim. No shim on this side, no shim on the back side here. And then watch to see if there's any shim. So this has no shims either direction. So we know we're good, but just make sure that you don't wheel your tire and your rim over somewhere and you drop out a shim, then you go back there and it's like your brakes are rubbing or your hubs getting rubbed on by the rim. So so always remember that. Just kind of feel inside and the bearings on both sides, make sure there isn't any shims. If there are shims, just make sure you put them back in the same spot. So just kind of put them down on the floor and and just say, yeah, that's the inboard one, here's the outboard one, and here's the nut that encapsulates everything. So I'm gonna go over to my bench, and this is where we'll change the tire out. Grab a couple of tools here. Okay, first thing we're going to do here, you can get one of these at O'Reilly's. I think they're about $5. It's a really good stem puller, and it's got the cord on here, and I'll show you how that works later. Really good for the aviation. Well worth the $5. You can pull your valve core with any stem puller. You got a different variety. Some look like this little screwdriver and stuff, but I'll show you why this all-in-one tool works really well here when we go reassemble. So just remember that. So we're going to set that there. Here's our side that has the cut in it, so that's going to go in and pull the valve out. There's our valve. Set that aside. Now, next thing you think would be, we're going to take the bolts of the rim out. It's a split rim. Let's see, here's the bolt head here. Here's the nuts on this side. But we don't want to do that yet. We want to keep that rim together. I'm going to show you, here's a inexpensive, cheap bead breaker. This is the part that gets a little tough if you're doing it out in the field or you're doing it and you don't have the bead breaker. Usually you got to set it down on the floor carefully, and you're going to be pushing on it. Sometimes the best way is if you stand up here and you can work that bead off your feet and just work around there. You'll see it starting to work its way. Now you don't want to take a bunch of pry bars. Pry bars on these aluminum rims, they'll destroy them and they're going to be worthless. So just work it around with your feet. Could take a block of wood or that's a little sharper edge than your sole of your shoe, and you just keep standing on it till it pops. I'm going to show you the easy way to do it, and that is with our bead breaker here. This you can adjust. It just has a scoop that hooks onto the tire there, and we just push down on it, pushing around. Okay, you see now that bead is broken on this side. If you didn't break the bead and you took the bolts out, you'd be really fighting to get that half of the rim off. So then we take this, we flip it around. if you get one of these, I think we got this at Aircraft Tool Supply. They don't come with this little piece of angle iron. I adapted that on there because it starts to slide out. It just sits on here. That's a centering. It centers on the bearings, so you can actually get some pressure without it moving and sliding on you. So that was something that I adapted this one to. So same thing on the other side. Come back in there, not doing any damage to. You're holding it up close to the rim, but you're not doing any damage. You're not getting in there with a pry bar or a wrench. You're just working that tire around. The more you work it around, it'll all of a sudden let loose off the bead. There it goes, right there. So now we got the old tire unseated from the rim. Now we get into the part where we're just gonna undo the bolts. And what I usually do is I grab an open end wrench, excuse me, and in this case, this rim on the Cessna is a 3/8 of an inch wrench. So I just kind of get it at an angle so I can get it on there. It's kind of or you could use another deep socket. And we're just gonna undo our hardware here. You'll find a 9-nut, a locking nut. Check to see how that feels. Make sure that has good good friction on it. If not, replace it. They're also torqued, so the torquing also does hold the hardware tight. But they have these right here. Some manufacturers use different style nuts, and there's usually a washer underneath the head as standard. This one's going to be a 3-bolt pattern. Okay, set those aside. I usually take this side. Now, this is also a good time if you wanted to. I know this is really new, I don't need to, but this would be a time you could check, an easy time that you can take a caliper, feel the ridges on your brake disc and see what kind of quality it is, as far as, is the dimensions worn down. On these brake discs, I just off of memory, I could probably go over. I have a chart over here. I can go look and measure on the caliper. This is a APS 164004. I believe it's 00400. I'm mistaken on there. Let me just double check that. Yep. On the Pipers, a lot of times they use the 00200s. And here they say minimum dimension is going to be 0.162. On the 200s, or the 2000, well, they call it the 2000 here, is going to be 0.025 minimum thickness. And that's at the lowest part. And if you have a lot of ridges, it might be worth it. No, excuse me, this is a 04000. I just looked it up. So it is also 0.205 minimum thickness. These are brand new. I can tell you right now, I'm not even going to check them out because I can see that just probably put them on there last 100 hours. So they'll be good, but it's a good time to check them because you can get a caliper on it. Just going to put that back here. And set that back in the rim. One thing also you want to do when you're if you disassemble those, just kind of blow out and check any dirt or crumbs. Make sure that mating surface is clean where they're on there. I've actually had a customer come in one time and says, I don't know, I just put new brakes on my airplane and it seems like I feel them pulsing. And so I went out there, spun his tire, and I'm like, geez, that brake disc seems kind of wobbly. Well, I got in a kernel of dirt underneath there, and it lifted up on the one side of the brake disc. And so the brake disc was wobbling. It worked okay, but because of the wobble in there, it would push the floating caliper back out. and his first pressing of his brake would be he had no brakes. So pulled the wheel apart, pulled the brake disc off, found the dirt under one side of there, cleaned it out, put it back on, wobble goes away. And you can check that when you put your rim on too. So we're gonna pull this side off. We've already broken the bead, and now we're just gonna work our way in there and check the tire. Should be some good talc in there, tire talc. I don't know if they're ever even selling baby powder anymore. You can still get tire talc. I know there's been some, see on TV, there's lawsuits with the talcum powder getting it. So I tend not to breathe it. This tube is really nicely powdered. Looks like it's in really good shape. You can take your air nozzle just to double check, but blow it up a little bit, put your finger over it, and then with a little air in there, you can just look around and see if you see any abraded areas that you don't like. But if it looks good, this one looks really good, I'm going to reuse it. I mean, it's in good shape. Looks pretty much very brand new on there. So I'm just going to reuse that. So I'm going to set that aside, set it aside carefully so you don't get any crumbs. We're just going to discard this. Now, tire I'm going to put on as a recap. This one might pass. We save our tires and we send them in, and you can actually get money for tires. They might give you a little credit if the sidewall looks good and the cording, it might be questionable, but they might accept that tire with the cords. If it has a hole in it, definitely not going to. And what they do is we just are trying these at our flight school because they're very, very beefy tires. We got these from Omaha Aircraft Supply. You can see they look like they're flight custom specials. Well, they're not. They're not Goodyears. That's just the sidewall they used on it. They will have a different approval tag right here that we'll cut off in a second. But I thought these, they look good tread pattern, and it's a really stiff. I mean, it seems like it's got some body to it. I mean, there's some good meat on there. So we're just going to give them a try. We go through tires a lot here, so anytime we can, get a better wearing tire and cost effective, that it's low speed airplanes, it doesn't really matter. And here's the Wilkerson company is the ones who recap these. Little ratty 8130 tag, but it's an approval tag, and has all the rating in there. This tire has all the approval, FAA approval, so it's TSO'd for a 6x6 tire, and then you have to decide this is a low speed tire, even though the side might say it isn't. It's level R1. It's going to be a standard low speed tire, which hits most general aviation airplanes. Would put this on a Cirrus because you're over 120 miles per hour on the Cirrus. Not landing, but you possibly could be a little bit higher than that. So we're gonna look at this tire. Looks good. We're gonna just give it a little dusting of some talc, and we'll just don't want too much in there. All that does when you have too much, just kind of shake it around, get it in there. We want it so the tube doesn't stick inside there and have a problem of moving and then abrading it. If it sticks, the two rubbers stick together and then it just kind of vibrates, and then you get you'll wear a hole right through it. So just go in there, but you put too much talc in there and you get these talc beads, and then they're almost like little ball bearings, that with the tire rubbers and the tube rubber, they start to ball up, and you can see them. If you ever take them out, you'll see you'll hear them. They'll be like rattling around like little balls. Those also cause issues with the tires. Now, take a look. Red dot on a tire. What's that red dot for? Well, when they recap them or when they make them, they find the light spot. And you figure, well, okay, so it balances out, and there's one spot around here that's light. Well, two things. You got a stem on your tube, so that's going to be a heavier spot on your tube. So you put that on the light spot of the tire. And Number two is it's nice to have a spot, you know, that you put the tube to, because you can see if your tire starts walking and from heavy braking, and you'll notice if your stem starts to walk, you're probably going to pull that stem out of there. And they do. I mean, it's, you know, the aircraft, the tire pressures are not real high on the Warrior. They're like 24. If you brake hard, that can actually rotate the tire on the rim. These beads are not real sticky. It's not like a sealed tire like you would have on your automotive truck or car. These are just, you know, since they're tube tire, the bead is not a real sticky bead, so they can creep on you. And once the tire starts creeping, you'll see that stem off in one direction there. So two things that dot shows you. You can look at that. Your stem's right there. You know where your stem's going to be. And it's the light spot on the tire when they manufacture it. And you can see if you're, you know, you have broken hard and, you know, cause the tire to creep, because when it starts to creep, you're going to rip that stem off. So I look at the tires, you know, here all the time, and I go, oh, well, that's starting to go. I better go pull that, change the tube on it. So we're just going to stuff that tube in there, just lightly stuff it in, get it kind of positioned. And we're just going to take our air nozzle again. We're going to start to work it in, inflate it. Get it back into position. We're going to do that a few times now, and we're going to just kind of make sure it's floating good and not puckering up. That's the major thing, is getting any wrinkle out of there. So biggest thing is give it a little inflate. Now that one's sitting, we're pretty close to that center stem, so that looks pretty good. So next thing we're going to do is, this is where this comes in handy for getting that stem through your rim. Toss this out of the way. Shove that through the stem hole in your rim like that. Hook it up to your threads that hold the cap. And pull the stem through the tube like that. Yeah, I'm not perfect on there, but I'm pretty close and lined up. Looks good. So that's it on this side. Now we're going to take it, we're going to flip it over. This is where you got to be careful of pinching a tube. You'll see they do kind of wrinkle a little bit until you get them in there. And so you got to kind of make sure they're kind of out of that seam. And then when you come in here like this, see here. And what I like to do is hear that metal sound. If it funks a little bit, you know you got a little tube pinched in there. Pinched tube is not going to stay inflated very long. Keep pressure on it. Keep pressure on those two halves. Now we're going to come over and we're going to put our washer on. One of them. We're going to put our nut on the other here. I'm going to go back to our wrench, turn in the right direction. And open end on this side. And I'm going to snug those halves together. Now the halves they're stuck with that one nut. We're good. We're not worried some more about holding that pressure on there. Sometimes tires are stiff. You can go to the side of your bench and set it down like this, where you need more pressure. Get in here and put a little pressure down there to get that nut started, just to hold them together. These are not forcing the rims apart. It was easy. I can just push it against my chest and do that. So we'll go through with the other bolts, and nuts and washers. Those all started here. Yeah. We're going to lightly, here again, I'm going to torque these later. We're going to lightly start them. hold your wrench right up here. You know you're not going to over torque them. You got it right there. Okay, snug there. I'm going to go to my torque wrench. Got my socket off there. Conveniently used a 1/4 inch drive and a 1/4 inch drive. It's going to be a light torque. Now, if you look on the most rim manufacturers, you'll see a data tag on there. And on that data tag, see if we can get in the light there. Sometimes they're not in great shape, but it's Cessna part number made by Parker, which is Cleveland. And if you look on there, torque nuts, 90 inch-pounds right there. See the 90? And then if you can't find that, if that's scraped off, you say part number. It's 40-113 is what it looks like. So you could go on to the Parker Hannafin Cleveland book, and you could look up what they say. Or you're going to see that most times you have, these are 1/4 inch bolts. There again, remember I told you those standard torques are somewhere between 70 and 104 inch-pounds. They picked 90 on these to do those rims. You know that because they're a 7/16 inch head on the bolt. A lot of the other ones, like the Pipers, you'll see mostly those will be 1/2 inch wrench fits on them. So they're going to be, let's see, next size up, 5/16 inch bolts. Those go to 150 inch-pounds of torque on the rims, and we'll show them on there. So just make sure you got this. So what we're going to do is set our torque wrench to 90 inch-pounds. Click over here this way, closer. You'll see there's Newton meters on there. And here we go, coming up to the 0 on 90. Locked into place, there's 90. You know, the idea is you just never want to overstretch bolts. They design these to be designed around stretching many times at this 90 pounds. That's all they want to hold them together. So I'm just going to do that. Come up. Hear the click. That one's good. Next one. Hear the click. Next one. Click. Now I always, if there's multiple 3, I'm going to remember that I did 3 times. But if you got like 6 of them holding them together, I always go one more time just to make sure. Oh yeah, that's right. I did get all of them around there. So just double check that one again and click. So we're good on that. Now, at this time, we're going to do is we will seat the tube in the rim right now. I'm going to pull this back off. And I'm going to hold the stem a little bit. I'm going to do one more inflation of it. Just get it up there, get it to feed a little bit. Let it go, let the air out one more time. Listening for it, you can hear sometimes it the rubber kind of squunches around and works its way around. I like how that one is sounding and looking. So hold the stem, because otherwise when it shrinks down, it'll pop back into the rim too far, and then you have trouble with it. So just put a little pressure with your finger. Don't over tighten these. Take the same tool again that we took out the stem and tighten it up. You know, you can feel the seating. Give it a good snug. Don't over tighten, and we're good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our tire pressure gauge. The tire pressure gauge filler that Dave and I make makes it a little bit easier. And this is going to go on a Cessna restart. So Pete, go over there onto the board and tell me what is the on the board after here. find tire pressure? So, yep. 40, 38. 38 in the main. Yeah, that stem is coming off nicely. Check our pressure. Feet. Want to get on the gauge here. We're at 20 there. Give it a little bit more. And it looks to me like 38, doesn't it? Looks good. All right, there we go. It's good on that. Get our cap back on. Dust cap, and actually dust cap, and it also has a nice O-ring in there. So just in case that stem were to leak a little bit, it's a secondary feature on these tires. It's more than the automotive one. You crank it on there, and it actually has some sealing capabilities also. It's not just a dust cap. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is, since we have these there, I want to see what the bearings look like. Let's do the bearings real quick. And you got it off, you might as well, you know, do them at that time. Makes most sense. We do ours quite a bit, change our tires quite a bit. If you look, there's that little keeper ring. It has a little cut in it that you can take a little screwdriver and pop it out. And we're going to take the bearing, and now these obviously look great. We just did those, but I'm just going to do this side just for the sake of showing you. These are the, here's a felt on this one there that you keep greased up, oiled up, greased up. I just usually use a little bit of grease and rub it in there, and then it goes on this. I'm just going to clean these off and just repack them just to show you guys. So I'm just going to clean that up. Not going to clean off the, I'm just going to clean the outside of this one, inside of this one, and then double check that felt for dirt. If it's really dirty, I'm going to wash it off, but it's not. It looks really good. It's got a nice set of grease. Just rub any dirt that might be on it, but it's for getting dust and dirt, and set that aside. Now look at that. There's no reason to wash this bearing out. It looks really good. If we were inspecting it, yes, but we just did these. So what I'm going to just do is repack them with grease. When washing them out, use a solvent. You can use some brake clean. The type of solvent you use, like our solvent machine, I don't like to leave it in there. Try to blow it out, but it's very greasy, and it seems to push the grease out of the way. So when I'm done, I like to use a low flash solvent, such as a brake clean, non-chlorinated, anything, so it doesn't wreck anything. But just to get it really, use alcohol's good. And that really cleans out that oiliness, because you want that grease to actually, you know, stick to the metal. A lot of times you look at the solvents on like you have a safety clean. It's a higher flash solvent, and the reason that is because it has to cook. If you look at it, it's almost like a kerosene, and you can't get that off there. So, I mean, it's good for washing the stuff, but it's hard to get it off the metal. And if you were to, you know, try to blow it off the best you could, don't ever spin the bearings. That hurts them. Don't spin them don't spool them up. Sounds cool. You know, and then take it, after you wash it like that, take it to something that has a little bit lower flash point, like a brake clean or an alcohol that gets that greasy consistent. It's consistency off the bearings. So since these bearings are pretty clean, I'm just going to re-give them a little, and just clean off the cup in here. Just to look at it, I'm just going to look for any damage on it. Looks good. Just run your hand in there, look for any water marking, any, you know, water marking usually is when bearings sit there and they rust in that one spot or corrode in that one spot. You'll see these little spots of dark discoloration. But that cup looks good. This is a, I don't know, cheap bearing packer that I got over at O'Reilly's. I think it's under 25 bucks. And as far as the grease, I mean, I'm using a Bloch Aviation grease, SHC 100. It's a synthetic wheel bearing grease. It works quite well. really don't know what the price of it is. I mean, don't use tractor grease. Use an aviation. You know, go with a Mobile or an Aero Shell or something. A good wheel, general purpose wheel bearing grease that they have. You know, you know, just don't cheap out. I mean, you can use something down there from the auto parts store, but I mean, it's you know, I tend to like, you know, the quality of aviation supplies. You know what you get. This has a, the reason being is, if you look at the back side of here, the reason why aviation stuff is what it is you'll see a mil spec. And that's the military. You know, you don't know what you get at O'Reilly's. Everything in aviation, you have a military spec. It's called a mil spec. And with that mil spec, excuse me, with that mil spec, you know that it's every time it's made to the quality that the military spec'd it out at. And you know, you go somewhere else, it might have the properties, it might be great, but you know that it meets that condition. You know, do you know? And you don't. Not if it doesn't have the mil spec on it. But if you find something, there's a lot of stuff at the auto parts store that you can get that will have a military spec on it. You can look in the back side of the container. So we're just going to squeeze some grease through the bearing. I squeezed a lot through the bearing on that one. Stuck, but you see it came out the top side there. We're just going to rub some excess on the outside rollers. And we're going to take our finger here. We're going to go inside the bearing cup. We're going to apply some on there. And then what I always like to do is I like to fill that little gap that you're, you know, just put a little extra in it along there so it has something. If it you know, just a little extra right in there, so when you put this back on, that it has plenty of grease there that it can draw from if it needs to. Tap our dust seal back on, and we take a look at our keeper. And this keeper is only used really to keep that dust seal into place once you get everything together. But it's an irritation if you don't get it into place. So just make sure, I mean, it needs to get a little ratty when you look at them, and just make sure that it's a spring steel keeper is into place. That one's in good. You can give it a test by pulling on it and see that it's not coming out. So we pack that side. We're not going to go to the other side. We're going to go install this tire because the other side is going to look good. But that's basically, in a nutshell, repacking your bearings. And the only other thing would be looking at the bearing, washing them out, and just looking. We looked at the cone inside there, saw for any markings. Now on the roller bearings, just, you know, looking at it, make sure there's no bad spots or flat spots or corrosion spots. Got our tire filled. We're going to grab our can of brake clean because I've been touching the disc here. So we'll grab that in a rag and go over to the airplane and grab this for okay, I'm just going to go run quick and get a new counter pin. I'll be right back. Okay, so we can take a look at our axle. This is a good time to look and see if you see any problems with it, anything loose. The attachment hardware, you can see this is where we're not putting our wheel pants on, but that's the attaching wheel pan hardware. And just kind of clean up the axle just a little bit like that. And then just for ease of doing it, any of that little grease you had left there on the inside, I just coat it just again right around where you're sliding it on, so bearings slide on nicely through there. And we don't have any shims there, so we're just going to go on like this. Wipe off any excess on the threads. need a bunch of excess there coming through. That just collects dirt and dust. And so we're seated up there now, so we know that that's good. We don't have any shims, so we'll put our nut on. And always good to take a look and see on your axle, what do you have? You know, what do you have here? This one only has a hole drilled 4.5, so that's what we're going to look for when we're lining up. So take that, spin it on, and this is going to be kind of like how you do your bearings on a trailer. Airplanes are about the same. There's not going to be anything in there. Some of the bigger airplanes and fancier airplanes are going to have a torque on and then a torque off, a lighter torque that backs the nut off. But even on our King Air, they don't even have that, a specification. But you get into some of the jets and things, that's what they have. So what we're going to do is, everything's going freely right now. You want to preload those bearings. So what we're going to do is we're going to know, so, okay, this is a hole here. We know we want to go there. Let's just see how it is to bring that up to that point. And can we go a little bit past that? Yeah, but that we're not going to get another one coming around. So we're going to back off on that. We're going to take a look at that. And it has a little bit of friction on it. You can feel the friction on there. You know that you wiggle it back and forth. What I always like to do is, if you can get like you feel the friction on there. Before, when I spun it, it would go for a long time. This one would probably only go around about 1.5 turns. There's just a little bit of friction on those bearings, and that's kind of what we want. We don't want them, because otherwise you'll come back and you'll check them and they're loose, and that looseness is going to damage the cone and the cup. They're going to be riding together and make some marks, and they're back and forth. So this is where this guy comes in handy. It helps me line it up. So I go, oh, hey, well, that fits in there pretty good. These are always tricky. They're bigger. They need to be. Then they get the little tangs in there, and they don't fit real good. So what I tend to do is I take my channel locks and I make it shorter. And I fit it in there, and I start giving it a little bit of bend here so I can get like that, maybe that first portion in there. And like that. And see if you can get it going. It's always a challenge. Sometimes you can bend this end just a little bit too. Give you another kind of curve it in a little bit. Like that. And then like that. And look for your other side of your hole there. There we go. I'm going to take your channel locks, force it in this way a little bit. Sometimes you can give a little tap. Keep that. Now we're going to want it. We're going to want the loop this direction, like that, because of the way our tangs are. Of course, it doesn't want to go that way. There you go. And then we're going to take our tangs. That one's a little bit big. Both of these tend to be a little on the big side there. Problem is, when you bend them, and they sometimes can catch that. As you see here, you couldn't leave it like that, right? And you see that the pin is stationary. But remember that dust thing there? It's right there. That's moving. So what you want to do is go in there and take your tanks a little bit like this. Snip that off. Keep your little FOD material so it doesn't get in your tire. This, cut them a little shorter, like that. And we're going to take them. We're going to bend them into place here. Like that. This. And sometimes it works like this. So you go to this side. Start to hold them up like that. This side. Hold them down like that. Get them tight. Now they're not going to interfere with it. We'll give it a spin. Looks good. No problem there. A little bit of drag on there. Everything looks good. We got our recap tire on there. Our stem is all lined up nicely. Looks even. Now the only thing we have to do is put our brake linings on. So we'll go back. This rag with our pieces of FOD. Just keep all your parts, you know, on a rag or in a pile so you clean them up so you don't run them over your hanger. And you get, you know, next thing you know, you got a pop tire because you because you got a piece of metal or a screw in there. So go back over here. Here's our brake linings. We said that was good. We didn't change them, so we don't really need to squash the puck in on the caliper. If we were to change them out, we'd probably squash the caliper to give us a little bit easier time to start the bolts. The bolts get a little stiff sometimes in there. Pull them out and just clean up take a little brush inside their little, like a pipe cleaner, and clean the bolts off. Sometimes the aluminum and the metal kind of corrode a little bit. So I got that. Let's try and get those started like that. Push them together. Grab this wrench. Torque them when we're done. Snug them up. You don't have a torque wrench on these and you have to do something with it. You're safe to say if you grab here and give a good snug like this, you're going to be at about 90 to 100 inch-pounds. We know that we have this already set up at 90, so let's just see how close I was on it, see how much it moves. It's a little bit. Yeah, right about there. All right, so we're good. Now, just because we did have greasy fingers and stuff, just hit your brake linings, hit your disc with a little brake clean. That'll just clean off. You see any residue coming through their old brake lining stuff, it'll give you a nice fresh start to it. And there we go. There was a tire change and inspecting brakes. Any questions?
Hey, Paul, it's David. You had said that some of them will have safety wire. Is it necessary to rewire those if it has it?
Yes. I mean, it's not a bad idea. Some people don't. They just torque them, and you have to depend on the manufacturer. Some people really like to have that. It's an added safety. I'll tell you what, I have never in my history seen one that fell apart if you torque them and you do the manufacturer specs. But if an airplane comes in, the customer has holes drilled for it, they were safety wired, I safety wire them. It takes you 5 seconds to do it. I mean, well, half a minute to do it. It's not a big deal. Just remember positive and, bring your wire through there. But so yes, I guess that's my feeling is if there's holes there and it comes into my shop, I re-safety them. So, but you see some people who decide not to. Like I said, these never did have any provision for safety wires, so you just torque them to the torques and you're good. So, any other questions? All right. How are we doing on time? I could actually, as far as the oil change, I could probably just, I can do a bridge where we don't want to sit there and wait for it to drain, but are we interested in an oil change on this? Sure. Okay, let's do it. Any more questions on changing the tires there?
Paul, it's David again. Elizabeth had put it in the chat. I don't know if you're seeing that, but her question was, how do you prevent the dirt from getting inside the tire?
Dirt from getting inside the tire? Would that be like inside the actual tire? The bead on the rim, you saw when we broke that bead, that's what keeps the dirt from outside of the tire. So once we inflated that back up, that new tire, the bead on the new tire is going to attach to the rim, and that seals up the interior up there. Now, of course, you look, there's the dirt gets in past those bearings. That's why bearings get dirty. But if you think about it, that inside of that hub, there's not an O-ring in there because those are not, they're tube tires, but it's still, those pieces fit together. So you never see dirt that really goes any further than inside the rim and inside where the bearings are. Those beads are pretty good. You'd have to break that bead for anything to migrate in there. You'd have to probably go four-wheeling. Maybe if you had a big Tundra tire or something like that, yeah, side loaded, maybe you could squeeze some dirt in there. But other than that, that bead on the rim and the bead on the tire keeps everything out of the tube area and the inside of the tire. Does that answer Elizabeth's question?
Elizabeth said, yeah, thanks. So
Okay, good. You know, and an oil change is another good thing, something that's on the list, and that is replacing fasteners. If you look, that's on the there's a lot of stuff in preventative maintenance, you know, that you can do. So, you know, you don't like the fasteners, you want to replace some of them. You see a broken fastener or a cowl fastener, like on the Cessna. Pulled this off, and the screw came out on the cover plate. So that's just going to be leaking air a little bit. So I'll have to find a new screw for that. When I bring it out, that's just so you can get to the spark plug, and you know, all that is leaking upper deck pressure. All that air comes in, goes through the cooler, and cools off the engine. Now you don't want to have that leaking. So, but because of the way the baffling, when that screw fell out, you're going to find that. That's the time to replace it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the other screw out to match up the screw, because I'm guessing that is the same screw on that side. So do that real quick. Match up the screw, looks good. And it's always good. What I always think is when I see something wrong when I'm doing this kind of an oil change, or I like to, you know, if we're doing an annual, we're going to write some of that stuff down. But in this, I like to just remember, instead of getting off to something else, I go, you know what, I don't like that. Looking for, you know, the nuts and the things here. I like to fix it right away, so it stays fresh in my mind, and you stay very organized with it. So there we go. That back on, and as I'm going to go here, I'm going to look at just some of the screws that hold the baffling and the rocker covers. They look good on this side. Good time to do it when you're doing an oil change. You just look things over. See anything that looks loose, then give it a. I always grab my multi screwdriver so I can just give it a little snug. See something you think looks like it might be a little bit loose. Everything else looks good there. Oil cooler looks pretty good. Looks like there could be, I might want to also take an air hose and blow backwards on there. Looks like there might be some cotton in there. It's always good to do that this time in the summer. But so this is the point where we could be draining the oil right now and taking care of some of this stuff. So in this case, depending on the model of your airplane, some Pipers, you can just lift up the top. You don't have to take the top cowl off. And bottom cowl, if you just need a little extra room, I'm not going to take this off. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to access it enough that I am going to be able to get in to the, there's hardware pieces. There's access to get in for the drain hose right here. So if you look down on the bottom, you'll see every airplane will have, is that bright enough down there? Can we see that? Where my hands are? There's a quick drain. Happens to be on this side of the sump, on this one. Sometimes they could be on the other side. Most airplanes do have that quick drain. Just find a hose that matches that and bring the hose down to a bucket and start your quick drain. Now, I don't need to do an oil change on this, so I'm not going to do that right at the moment, but I'm just showing you how that is. So now we're going to go to, I will change the filter out just to show you that aspect of it. So right now we got our hose draining into a bucket. If you do an oil sample, you know, let it drain for a little bit. It takes quite a while. If you do an oil sample, they don't want the first oil. So like a Blackstone or some of the other type of oil samples. So wait for the stream to be going for a bit, and then you fill up the jar and send it in. So now I'll show you a little trick that I like. And that is a nice tall kitchen garbage bag with just your standard kitchen garbage bag. It's got the little plastic top string in there like that. Okay, so we got some masking tape. So this is kind of a thing that can be quite messy. And I say this will help you not mess it up. Doesn't work all the time, but it's a good start. Get your bag stuffed down in here. And this is the tricky part, making sure you don't tear it on anything. That's why I always have a pet peeve of the tie wraps that are really rough. Okay, so now you see that little strap there. You want to bring that around to the back side of the filter adapter plate, where the filter actually seats. I'm around there on this side. Now you got your magneto over here, and I am going to, if I can find my start of my tape, take a piece of tape. Excuse me. And I'm going to tape that bag to the magneto on this side. Hard to swallow it out here. Now we go over to here, and here's that plastic banding in there. Make sure we get it up and behind there, like that. Tape that there, and right here, doesn't really matter a whole lot. We got the bag just kind of sitting there. Go over and take our got a banner going here. Somebody's throwing a banner. Can you get a picture of that? I wonder if they're selling here. It's like a, well, it looks like a Piper, like Piper Pawnee or something like that, towing that. You guys see that? You can't see what they're advertising yet. Something, big banner. I don't know, what's it say, Pete? You got good eyes.
It's hard to see with the clouds.
Yeah, it really is hard to read. Well, spending good money for advertising something. Well, didn't work.
I think it says free oil changes all month long at Thunderbird Aviation.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Yes, I bet you that's it. Yep. All right, so we're going to take our cutter here again, cut our safety wire off. Now, take a look. I mean, if you hadn't did the safety wire before, whoever did the last oil change, just check to see if you like how that is, and just look. Now, usually there's a tang right here on most light combing. Sometimes that tang's busted. You can go around the carefully go around the oil temperature sender, but just kind of take a look at your application and your engine and figure out how you do that. how it was run last. If you look at this, you can see right now, this is coming along here, it's coming there. Well, let's think about it. What is it? You know, is it a positive? Yeah, it is positive because we're going to spin this filter off this way. That wire is going to keep it from going any further. So we know it's a positive. Negative would be if it was on that other side and it could start spinning quite a ways before it stopped it. So we're going to cut the wire, get it out of our way here. And I usually just, so it doesn't snag the bag, I cut it back over here too, and then I throw this in the garbage. Cut open. We're not going to cut this one because it takes a while to drain. So I'm just going to set that there, but I have one that we can cut open right there on the floor. So now I got our bucket that's draining, got our safety wire off our filter. Now this is kind of a handy dandy wrench. You can get these at Aircraft Tool Supply. It's a torque wrench. I have mine set to 17.5. If you look on filters, it's 16 to 18. I'll show you why I have mine set a little bit higher. But you can use that or any, it's in 1 inch boxed end or open end. A boxed end works better because they tend to, the metal housings tend to contort a little bit. So in this case, and this is a little bit more difficult because it's a shorter handle. Sometimes that's all the room you have. But we're just gonna get in there and loosen this guy up. That's why a bigger wrench sometimes just to take them off works better. But for torquing it, we're good. And there we go. But it's nice having the ratcheting capability of this one. All right, so got that. Start spinning our filter. Double check that that bag is back there. Now, as I start spinning it off, instead of dripping all over your engine and your cowling, we're catching it in that bag. So I don't know about you, but I hate mess because you just spraying a bunch of brake clean and cleaner out there trying to get all that oil out of there. So get that kind of draining. Always good to have a rag with you, which I don't have on me right now. Here we go. It's not dripping too bad. Now I take this, take my bucket, I put a little piece of safety wire on it. Hang it like this, wrap it around once, and that is there. Now you let that drain. You drain it overnight because you want to check your filter for metal later on. I heard it draining in there. Want to make sure it wasn't leaking in my cowl. It's not. We're good. So what we're going to do now, just go a few hours later to our next day or whatever we want to do. Here's our filter. We're going to go check it. Pete, we're going to go in the other area, the other shop here. You know, I know a lot of people do oil analysis, a lot of different things. You know, they work. It seems to me a lot of times, Dave and I see that most of them are doom and gloom all the time. And you see, boy, how long are you going to have doom and gloom with your oil analysis? Something's not right. It's got too much this. And I've seen engines that go 3,000 hours that were doom and gloom the whole time, way past a TBO. And they, you know, so it's like, not saying the oil analysis aren't good. They have a good trend. They have some values to them. But it seems like they can be quite negative and make people a little bit nervous. I look at it, the engine's always making metal. If you got a pile of metal in your filter, you got an issue you got to address. So I think that still the filter cutting and the screen on the filter, and I'll show you where that is. I'm not going to do it since I didn't do the drain the oil, but I'll point it out when we get back there, that screen, which is, you don't have to do it every 50 hour, but you know, might not be a bad idea to do 100 hour. Here's a nice aviation filter cutter. Works really well because it's designed to cut open aviation filters. This one's made by Champion. It's called the CT923. Probably a little bit more expensive. I have one down in my other box. Flying Cloud, I think I got from Aircraft Tool Supply, quite a bit cheaper. But it's not a bad investment. But if not, bring it over to us. We'll cut it open for you. We'll use this one. We'll let you do it. Just sitting here, you know. So it's just like a pipe cutter. It's got that little wheel on the bottom. Stick it on top around where the threads are, or even on top where there would be threads, but they're recessed depending on your filter type. And the wheels here roll around it. And you just keep on increasing tension as you go around, just like you would if you were cutting a pipe or a tube. There you go, nice, like that. And back it off. Take a look inside there, top of the, nothing really metallic there. The oil is pretty dirty on whatever. I think that was the last oil change I did. It's marked somewhere on there. Don't know where my filter bucket is, but we'll just put it there. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to look here, and on these are Tempest filters. They have a nice magnet in the backside you can get to. You can look for any metallic particles there. This one's nice and clean. That magnet would be hitting those steel particles. It's not going to do you any good if they're aluminum, and a lot of times they are aluminum. And aluminum's bad. It could be bad too. Steel usually is going to be, depending on your, could be your rings if you have steel cylinders. It could be a little bit rubbing on that. Some of the gears are steel. Aluminum is going to be case parts, or a lot of times the wrist pin caps that are on the pistons. And we saw that on one of our new engine overhauls down at Flying Cloud. It was our Archer engine, and we had an oil change, and I found shavings of this. And I'm like, oh boy, now what? And I thought about it, and I'm like, I think they overheated these cylinders. So sure enough, we pulled the cylinders off, and the caps are aluminum. And those caps were shaved down because they overheated the cylinder so much that if you look at the fins on the barrels of the cylinders, it looked like a washboard on the inside. The metal just looked like a washboard. And so those pins going up and down just started shaving down. So we had to do even though it only had 300 hours on the engine, I had to do a top overhaul on it. So, but there's the magnet, looks good there. Next thing we'll do is we'll just visually go in the pleats and look for stuff. You're going to see some stuff, but what do you see? Big stuff? No, nothing like that. And if you see more than you like, they do sell them, or you can take a Stanley knife, you cut along here all the way around, take a pliers, and you can pull this out like a ribbon, put it on a cloth, and start looking at it. You could take some solvent, wash out into a container, and see how much metal and what it's made out of. But right now, I mean, I can see there's this, other than dirty oil, this is looking really good. So look inside the container. That's a very successful oil change for that filter. Looks really good. So that's a filter inspection right there. So, all right, let's go back to, I'll point out, let's see if I get my white. And a pointer. See if we can see this in here. Come over this side, Pete. Okay, if you look down, you guys can see back where I pointer, there's a little cap that goes in the bottom of the sump. It's on this engine right there. And you see it's safety wired there. I would say maybe every other oil change, it's not bad to look at that. I have seen where the filter doesn't have much of anything, but all of a sudden you got some big chunks of metal where something broke inside, and you want to kind of have an idea and think about that. That's a big screen. That's the big screen that after all the oil gets down to the sump, that catches big stuff that goes up to your oil pump. Your oil pump sucks it up there, and your oil pump's just right behind that where the oil filter is, an adapter plate back there. So that's they're called the oil suction screen. A lot of times those get forgotten about. People don't like getting in there and taking that out. And like I said, we do it every 100 hour. Don't do it on a 50 hour like we're doing right now. But it's good to look at occasionally. Sometimes you see some carbon in there. That's not a big deal as long as it's not, metallic stuff. But I have seen things that did not show up in the filter that actually showed up in that screen. And it makes you say, I'm going to watch this. I'm going to call around, see if it's going to be a concern. Is it something that was just in there that got kicked around when the engine was first overhauled? When was the last time somebody cleaned that screen out? But it's good to look at. It's good to look at. Keep an eye on it. Most of the time, they're spotless. A little bit of carbon, that's about it. So, oh, the other thing on the filters you'll see on them, you know, and they changed. I don't know. I would say within this last year, there'll be installation instructions. That's nice. What that would be. I think that's Walt Fricke's Waco. That's a neat airplane. Okay, so installation instructions on it says install filter clean and dry. Do not use lubricant or DC4 compound on filter or engine mounting pad. So they changed that one. It used to be you'd either put some DC4 or a little bit of the oil from there. Well, they must have changed their seals on them, so they don't want that anymore. And then you'll see hand tighten and then apply 16 to 18 foot-pounds of torque. Safety wire, run engine check for leaks. So because of that, what we're going to do is we're going to go and I'm going to wipe that adapter plate down that we had that filter on before because they said they want it dry. So we're going to do that. You know, here's your filter. Everything looks good. Take the cap off there. And what I do is I leave the bag in there as I'm going and I just get her snug down because you can get some residual dripping there. Just snug it down there. The reason I do that, now it's somewhat sealed. Now I'm going to pull the bag. And I'm going to pull the bag and make sure I didn't pinch it in there. That's why you got to be careful. And I didn't pinch it. So here we go. Get that done there. And here's our oil. We can get rid of that in our bucket and the residual. I'll just set that aside. But that would be in your belly of your plane and your cowling if we didn't use the bag. So the bag really comes in handy. So as long as you don't pinch a hole in it. So just gonna set that aside here. Back to that torque wrench that I have set. I have set it a little bit on the higher end of the range on there. And if you look, now this also becomes a torque wrench. Turn it around, and now it's going in the opposite direction, torquing. So we get it into place. Okay, there's our click. I have mine set on the high end of the range, and I'll show you why. Little trick that we did. Hey, get here. That's a fun day at the airport. Boy, I'd like to have a ride back. All right, so here's our safety wire pliers. We're going to be doing an oil change. I would suggest investing in a safety wire pliers. Trying to spin the wire by hand is very difficult. You can do it, but it's difficult. Safety wire. If you're going to get a spool of safety wire, stainless steel safety wire, pretty much 99% of the stuff you do is going to be 32 thousandths on the airframe and engine. There's a few things that aren't. The props usually are 41 thousand, and then some electrical connectors are 20 and 25,000 specified just to hold the cannon parts together. So what we're going to do here is we're going to feed this through the hole on the adapter plate. If you can get my big fingers out of there, like this. So you see now we got that spun through the hole in the adapter plate like this. I got plenty of safety wire here. It's going to be way too much, so I'm just going to trim it down here and get a little carried away. That's plenty. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're down there and we're going to say, okay, what am I going to go to? I think I'm going to go to this tang right here, right down there. Okay, so get my finger down there like this. That's where I want to attach my safety wire pliers to. So we take that. They're locking. And you can spin them either direction. Doesn't really matter which direction. Depending on some bolts, you want to spin it the opposite direction for holding the wire around a bolt. But in this case, we're just going around a fitting. So we're just going to spin this. You can spin it by hand, rotate it by hand if you don't have that spinning capability. And we're looking at the threads there. Now, you know, what do we got? About an inch there. And if you look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, low side, 6 per inch, you know, usually go 6 to 8. So I'd give it another spin. That's pretty good. And you look and count those. And that's about the right tension you want, a right spinning amount, 6 to 8 twists per inch. Doesn't have to be perfect. You're not getting your ruler out there. You're just guessing it. You just eyeball and say, yeah, it looks good. You just don't want it just a couple turns. That's not good, you know. So now we take that end here. I always bend the hook up a little bit like this because it's kind of tight back in there. And I'm going to go through that hole on the filter. Like that. Hold this wire there. Get your safety wire pliers in there like this. And start pulling it tight into place. Just like that. Now, grab your other end like this, clamp it again, and spin your wire. Twist like that. Got the end of your wire off. Take your end of your pliers, and you make like what they call a little pigtail. Looks like a little pigtail there so that doesn't poke you. Now you look at this and some people, wow, I didn't get it quite super tight, right? This one is pretty tight, but kind of the mechanic sheet is, I went to the high side of my torquing. So that wire is good, but if I wanted to snug it a little bit, I could reverse it just a hair like this, tighten up the wire even tighter. I'm still within torquing. I'm still in that torquing range of 16 foot-pounds. So plenty tight, but I just snugged that wire up and now it won't vibrate and cut into the filter. So, and you know, at this point, start filling it up with oil, towel it back up and do a run-up check on it. So that's basically your oil filter change. So any questions? No questions? Okay, the only other thing I have to say is I just wanted to explain to you for got a couple of things going on. Crystal Fuel customers, since there's no longer fuel on the field, there's a promotional where you get 50 cents off a gallon, 10 gallons of 100 low lead for free after 10 visits. 50 cents off a gallon because you're from the Crystal Airport. Come down to the Flying Cloud location. Also, along with that, we have a Good as Gold program, which is 50 gallons of fuel and you get a half hour off your maintenance service. So, I mean, that's good. I mean, that's $44 worth of a freebie off there. That's not bad for. So you sign up, it's a free thing, it's Good as Gold. Talk to Andy Bloch down there. He's my parts guy down there and here, but he offices out of Flying Cloud. And you can use that towards an annual, anything you want. And then the other thing I've been working on is, this is like, it's called the, I don't know, I was trying to think of something clever. P cubed just sounded kind of good. And what that is it's a professional progressive planning for your airplane. I do that for a lot of my customers, but I'm kind of getting into it where I'm tracking it a little bit more. And that is, you do an annual, you see something, that maybe you catch next annual, maybe you catch in between items that you want to do. What about how many hours you are till TBO? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep track of that in a file so you can say, hey, Paul, where are we at on this? Because we're not restoring an airplane every annual. We're making it airworthy. We're making sure it's airworthy. Airplanes go into various stages of brand new parts to used parts. Used parts are good until the manufacturer says, that's too much play in this. The rod end in your control, no, you can't have that much play. But, it starts from hardly any play to the maximum allowable play. Well, where do you want to go in that? Do you want to change it every time there's a little bit of play? Maybe not. It's just like tires. You flat spotted the tire, but it's not showing cords. Oh, I got one flat spot on there, but the rest of the tire is good. Maybe you're not going to change it. So all these things. And so what it is a personal plan for your airplane where, we write the stuff down. I keep track of it. And, it just gives you an idea so you don't end up having an annual that, shoot, I wait till the annual to do everything. Well, that's dumb. Why don't we do some stuff in an oil change? Spread it out a little bit. That's how I maintain my little Piper. I take a look at it and say, I haven't done a whole lot on this lately. It's out of, annual is quite a ways down the road. Maybe I'll go change the tires, not do it today. So anyways, it's just a personalized P-cube. So I'm working on it. I'm looking to see if I can, I'm working on a spreadsheet right now. It's just writing it down on paper, and then, I got a file, and just gives us an idea. You guys can keep track of it. I can keep track of it, and just kind of a plan, I'm at 1,800 hours. My engine's running great. Well, where do you think it's going to be? How much do I need to plan for an overhaul? What do I need to do there? What about a prop overhaul? Do I need a prop overhaul? All these things that are coming up. It's just to get an idea so you can budget for it and not be caught off guard. That's the biggest thing for me is, I don't want to be caught off guard. I don't have, a bunch of money sitting around. I have to plan. I have to plan on what I'm going to be doing on maintenance on my airplane. So anyway, so that's just one of the programs there. So Good as Gold is the sign up for that is free. You get some half hour free for every 50 gallons you purchase. Crystal people, they get 50 cents off a gallon, and then the 10 gallons for, 10 gallons of 100 low bed for free after 10 visits. 120 gallons purchased on that. So that's pretty good. All these good promotions, and I don't know. Some of them might be stackable. I don't know exactly how they go. But talk to Andy in parts. He's my parts guy and keeps track of that stuff, so he'll know the particulars. Give him a call down there. Is there any questions? Anything else we would like to know today? Or
It's great, Paul. Thanks so much for going through it all today. I look forward to the next in your ongoing series.
Yeah, and then definitely look at that list, guys. Look at the list. It's really, you're not going to necessarily feel comfortable to do some of the stuff or all of it, but it's nice to know. It's nice to know. And the other thing, log it. A lot of times pilots go, well, I did this. I didn't know if I could, so they don't log it. Well, log it. And that's as simple as putting your pilot's number down there, the date, and the takt time of the airplane. Because you're not doing an inspection. I have to do the total time and write it a little different. All it is the takt time, what you did, and your pilot's certificate number, and then sign it off. And that becomes legal part of your documents. So if it's on the list and you do it, log it. It's nice to know. It's nice to know. So, well, thanks, guys. I'll let you get going. I think we probably burnt our time up, but we'll see you next time. Maybe one of these times we can get back in person again. I like having people around better. It's easier for me to teach and show things, but hopefully you can see it over. Hopefully my son Pete did an okay job on the camera. So, but thanks for joining. I enjoy talking to everybody. So anyways, have a good